Kyler Murray doesn't show up to voluntary workouts. Big deal, little deal, no deal. The Arizona Cardinals sign an offensive lineman. And will the Cardinals make the playoffs? BetOnline.ag has the odds. I'll talk about all that and more on this episode, Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. I am your host. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. You can check me out Thursdays on the Locked On NFL National Show with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans. I'm all over this damn place. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500. Use code Locked On at checkout. Jam show today, like usual. Kyler Murray doesn't show up to voluntary workouts. Does it matter? And what kind of look does it give for the future? I think that's a bigger question to ask. The Cardinals make a signing an offensive line, not necessarily someone you would think, but could prove to have an impact on the Arizona Cardinals in 2022. And BetOnline.ag has put out will this team in the NFC West make the playoffs? Yes or no? I've got the line, and I'll discuss it in the final segment. Kyler Murray doesn't show up to voluntary workouts. Knew this was going to happen. He's not the only veteran to, not show up. Veteran I use kind of loosely there. Is it a big deal? There's a couple different ways you can look at this. One, yes, it's a big deal. With what's gone on this offseason, this is Kyler Murray's first chance to say, you know what? I'm the leader of this team. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do everything that I can to prove to everybody that I'm ready in my fourth year to take the bull by the horns and be the leader that everybody wants me to be. It's one way you can look at it. Another way you can look at it is this doesn't mean anything. Like, why are we making a big deal out of this? If he were the only one not to show up, if he were holding out, if this were a mandatory workout and he didn't show up, but it's not. It's not any of those. So why are we even talking about it? You can make compelling arguments for both. I tend to not, toe the line and not choose one side or the other. So I'll choose one, but it's like an 80-20 split. 80%, not a big deal. 20% could be. Could be. If this is the ploy by Eric Burkhart and Kyler Murray's inner circle, I think that it says a lot about Kyler Murray's inner circle. And Kyler Murray's not to blame. I am in the camp that Kyler Murray should 100% get a new contract before the season starts. 100%. If Cliff Kingsbury did, so should Kyler. That's what I think. Steve Keim is completely out of this. If Cliff Kingsbury did, so should Kyler, because they're a package deal. I don't think that's irrational. I think that Eric Burkhart is in over his head. Truly, I do. And I think he's trying to make a name for himself with Kyler Murray as his client. And, I don't know if he's maneuvering around the negotiation waters as well or as effectively as he could. You can err on the side of, you hold out, you get paid, or you get traded. You're going to get paid regardless. I see that path, and we've seen that path. But if Kyler Murray wants to be an Arizona Cardinal, he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal, and they're going to figure it out. If he doesn't, that's something we're going to have to unturn later. I don't think there's any reason to think that that's not the case, because all lines point to Kyler Murray being we're number one for the Arizona Cardinals in perpetuity. So him not showing up, is it the best look? No. Does it matter? Probably not. And I think both can exist in cohesion with each other on April 20th, 2022. 8 days before the draft, sure. Getting closer. One thing that we're going to find out, if the Cardinals are dumb enough to trade Kyler Murray, we'll know in the next 24 times 8 hours, 192 hours. We're going to know. Because ain't no way somebody trading for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not getting draft picks for this year. So if we're stepping out of the vacuum and really looking into possibilities that the national media loves to talk about all these teams, because you know what? The majority of teams in the NFL would trade for Kyler Murray yesterday. And if the Cardinals don't understand the worth of Kyler Murray just based on that, we're in trouble. Covering, watching, experiencing what the Cardinals are going to be. If they don't understand the worth of Kyler Murray at this point, I'm at a loss for words, which is very rare for me. It's very rare for me. So again, him not going to voluntary workouts when other veterans are, it's not the best look, but for somebody that has said, or his agent has said multiple times that he wants a new deal before 2022, it could be a lot worse than what we've seen so far. It could be. It's not like Kyler Murray not showing up to voluntary workouts because he wants a new deal before 2022. Those words have not actually been stated, that Kyler Murray will not play in 2022 without a contract. There are jump to conclusion articles out there and speculation, articles based on speculative information, which makes total sense because we've seen this before. This is a back and forth between an employee and an ownership and a boss wants to get paid, doesn't want to pay him yet because they're not contractually obligated to do so. Thankfully, thanks to Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, and Sam Bradford getting way too much money before they step foot on an NFL field. I think there's going to be an amendment to that at some point within the next 5 or 10 years. But where we are right now, Kyler Murray did not show up to voluntary workouts. Is it a big deal? 80% no, 20% potentially. If this sort of absence continues into mandatory workouts, I just still think it's too close to call. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. The Cardinals made a signing midday yesterday, and it's a really good story, and it'll be interesting to see how it turns out come 2022 and beyond. I'll hit that next. But first, BlueNile.com. Whether she prefers a statement piece or everyday subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every mom. Shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pendant necklaces. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Celebrating the special women in your life, on BlueNile.com, you can easily navigate thousands of fine jewelry options at every price point. So this Mother's Day, gives mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners gets $50 off $500 purchases. This podcast exclusive, remember that, this is a podcast exclusive, is only good through Mother's Day. Use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. Second segment, Locked On Cardinals. Again, just really quick, with the whole Kyler Murray thing, this is just another talking point. We don't know any more than we did yesterday. We don't know any more than we did 2 days ago. This is all really just circumstantial at this point. And until we get closer, first to the draft, that's the first hurdle. And second, as we get closer to mandatory minicamp and mandatory training camp and OTAs, that's when we're going to start to see the clouds part and the sun come in on the situation, and we're going to get a lot more information as it pertains to Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals, and their future together. The Arizona Cardinals did make a signing. Haggai Chisholm Dubisi. He came from the Uprise Academy in Africa, started in part by Osi Umenyiora. Used to play with the New York Giants. It's a program in Africa that gets young men playing football. It's a great thing. Read up on it, okay? Because it's a great story. There's a 10-minute video on, I believe, azcardinals.com that talks about it. And it's just a great story altogether. This kid is 6'6", 298. He was invited to the NFL International Combine in London, where teams first got to scout him. What does this mean for the future? I don't know. We do know that the offensive line is an issue. 6'6", 298 is big. And if you like reading up on this young man, it's incredible. His backstory is incredible. This was quoted from azcardinals.com. Darren Urban does a good job over there. Said, quote, the dream has been that at least one of us gets signed because it's going to give hope to where I come from, because it looks impossible coming from my country, Nigeria, where American football is not like a sport people know. He goes on to say, when we were training, people looked at us like we were wasting our time. We should be doing something to put food on your table. That's how it was looked at. We just kept pushing and hoping that one day it was going to happen. So obviously, incredible story. From everything that I've read and watched about him, smart, talented, athletic, like everything you want from, a player employee for the Arizona Cardinals. So good on the Cardinals. I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go. I'm not exactly sure play time wise what it's going to unveil, whether it be 2022 or beyond. But it's another move to bolster the offensive line. And I think that's something that is without a negative move if the Cardinals are adding an offensive lineman. I think at this point, as we get closer to the draft, we're 8 days away. I'm still taking Zion Johnson at 23 overall. If I'm Steve Keim, if he's available, there still needs to be depth on the offensive line. And that's something that I've seen with this move. And, moving forward, I feel like it's going to be power in numbers with offensive linemen to see who can stick in Sean Kugler's scheme to improve upon the interior of the offensive line's gameplay last year. Now, it's not 100%, Justin Pugh, Max Garcia, et cetera's fault. Josh Jones on the right side. Rodney Hudson missing time is difficult. He's an all-pro center. You have to fill that hole, and it was difficult to do so for the depth that the Cardinals have, or lack thereof, at the center position. So all in all, good move by the Cardinals, adding depth at the offensive line position, It is not going to be a bad move by the Arizona Cardinals to add an offensive lineman from here until the start of training camp. That's just the rule of Locked On Cardinals. Boom. Alex Clancy, follow me on Twitter. Listen, the odds are out, and this is going to be something really fun to talk about. BetOnline.ag, another great, part of the Locked On Podcast Network family, put their odds out for the NFC West teams, if they will or will not make the playoffs. I will dive deeper into that next. First, Built Bar. What can I say? What can I say? People have given up on their New Year's resolutions, okay? But you don't have to if you're a candy fan and you like something sweet in the morning, I guess. I don't know how old you are, but if you want something that tastes good, that'll give you the protein you need in the morning, and you're over, making eggs every day, or, whatever you do in the morning, oatmeal, Built Bar has got you covered. Okay. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. And they're all chocolate covered, and they're good for you. They've got these protein-infused puffs, like it's protein-infused marshmallow that's chocolate covered. They're a treat, and they're still good for you. Breakfast, middle of the day, dinner. If you're trying not to eat too much at night, boom, Built Bar got you covered. Mint brownie, coconut almond, white chocolate cookies and cream. They've got these flavors that taste that sound like candy bar flavors, but they're Built Bars, and they're protein, and they're good, and they don't taste like crap. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals. I forgot to mention this earlier. As the draft gets closer, 24 times 8, right? 2, 3, 100, 192 hours, ballpark, between now and the draft. It's a little bit less. It's like 184 hours. We've got you covered from here through the draft. So starting Thursday, April 28th, tune into Locked On NFL Drafts, live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft with all 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And then also, for those dying to know beforehand who the Cardinals specifically or any other team you follow are going to take, catch Odyssey and Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show all week leading up to the first pick. So for the Locked On NFL Draft Live Show, you go to Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page on April 28th starting at 7 Eastern, April 29th starting at 6:30 Eastern, and April 30th starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. If you want the mock draft situation, the Odyssey NFL mock draft you can find on the Odyssey and Locked On NFL Draft podcast feeds, April 18th to the 22nd and the 25th. Woo! Got there. The Arizona Cardinals, according to BetOnline.ag, have the third best odds to make the playoffs regarding teams in the NFC West. The Rams are minus 250 to make it, plus 200 to not. The 49ers are minus 200 to make it and plus 160 to not make the playoffs. The Cardinals are minus 130 to play extra football, and they're even money to not. And the Seahawks, poor Seahawks, are plus 400 to make the playoffs and minus 600 to not. They have the longest odds to not make the playoffs. What does this mean? These are odds that I could make. And the reason why I say that, I mean, BetOnline obviously are the experts here, but the reason why I say that is there's so much uncertainty surrounding the Cardinals, and they're better than a handful of teams in the NFL is currently constructed. Those are the two things that we're seeing right now. The roster, DeAndre Hopkins, Budda Baker, Rodney Hudson, DJ Humphries, James Conner, Kyler Murray, that's more star power than a handful of teams have in the NFL, one namely the Seattle Seahawks in division. Yes, a lot's going to change. Yes, the Cardinals should build out their roster, you'd think, outside of the draft with the three picks, one each of the first 3 rounds, and then a cavalcade in the 6th and 7th round. You'd think that they're going to bring in some veteran talent that's still available via free agency and have a roster. But as of right now, these are pretty good odds. I think all things considered, this shows the power of DeAndre Hopkins, the power of Kyler Murray, the power of, Budda Baker, Byron Murphy, and J.J. Watt on the defense. And it's kind of a wait and see. These are good. I find it almost absolutely going to happen that these odds are going to shift. The Cardinals odds will shift more severely than any of the other 3 teams in the division before the season starts, because there's so much uncertainty, so many question marks, so many holes still needed to be filled. Unless Seattle trades for a quarterback, which seems like it's not going to happen, but who the hell knows at this point? I mean, it's wild with free agency and player empowerment and quarterbacks being traded and all that stuff. But as of right now, the Cardinals are minus 130 to make it, even money to not make the playoffs, with 14 teams making the playoffs. That's a lot. That means only 8 teams per division don't make the playoffs. So it's like, man, that was a huge step back if the Cardinals don't make the playoffs. And I feel like the bookmakers at BetOnline are giving the Cardinals the benefit of the doubt with them starting 10-2, having Kyler Murray, having a top-heavy star-studded roster, even though incomplete. And that's where we are at minus 130. So even money to not make the playoffs just scares me a little bit. But again, I feel like it's going to fluctuate more than any other team in the NFC West. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Man, I'm so excited for what's about to happen. We're going to get so much clarity over the next 2 weeks. So much clarity. Are the Cardinals going to take a wide receiver at 23? Are they going to trade back? Are they going to draft Zion Johnson like I want them to? Are they going to draft an edge rusher? Is George Karlaftis going to fall? Are they going to draft Devontae Wyatt from Georgia? Like, I've said this every offseason since I took over this podcast, So I guess it was the end of the 2017 season was the first time I said it. This draft is the most important in the Cardinals' history. And the reason why I believe it now more so than the rest of the years is because we're getting down to decision time with Kyler Murray. He needs to have the most full roster possible to show what he has at the NFL level. I said this about Cliff Kingsbury last year with DeAndre Hopkins going out. That was kind of skewed a little bit. But now, this draft, this offseason, this is it. This is the final dress rehearsal for Kyler Murray. And I don't know if he's going to get a contract before the season starts. He should. I don't know if he will. If he doesn't, we'll see what he and his camp think about the 2022 season. Because if Kyler Murray doesn't play, scariest environment imaginable. I know I've thrown a lot right at the end of the podcast, but looking at the odds, it's like BetOnline doesn't know. Hedging both sides because we don't know what this roster is going to look like. We don't know if Kyler's going to play. We don't know anything at this point. Do I think he will? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to get a contract before the season starts? I don't know. Are those connected? Kyler Murray playing to him getting a contract before the season starts? I don't know. A lot of I don't knows. April 20th, eight days away from the draft. Over a month since free agency started. There's a lot we don't know still. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and Eric Crocker, they do a great job, man. 30 minutes a day. These guys just crush it with everything you need to know about the Arizona Cardinals and the rest of the NFL Draft because the Cardinals don't have a whole lot of power with who they draft at 23. It's like drafting ninth in your 12-team fantasy football league. You don't really have, unless you trade up, you don't have a lot of power on who you draft. Those guys break it all down. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. We'll talk to you tomorrow.